Verse 18 tells us, if a man has a stubborn, listen up, by the way, if there's any teenagers watching, listen to this one. This will scare you. If a man has a stubborn or rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they have chastened him, will not heed them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city, to the gates of the city. And they shall say to the elders of the city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious, and he will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Verse 21, then all the men of his city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall put away the evil from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. Man, if your kids are stuck at home and they need to practice writing a verse, have them write Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 18 through 21, and let them know what the law says about rebellion. Here's the deal, Moses says. The Lord says through Moses, if you have a son, I find it interesting that it says son and not daughter. It could be either or, but he says son. If you have a son who's rebellious and they're just not listening, they're completely off base, they're not respecting you at all, you can bring them before the elders. They'll determine if this is legitimate or not. If it is legitimate and this kid's just way rebellious, you can take him out into the city, into the gate of the city, and he can be stoned to death. Now, nowhere in the Bible, and actually nowhere in Jewish history, do we see this ever happening. So it was never actually practiced, but I'm sure it was quoted a lot, right? I'm sure these Jewish moms quoted this frequently to their teenage boys, but nowhere do they see them actually carrying this forth. Now, you thought spanking your kid was harsh. This is really harsh, right? But we need to realize this truth. When I do weddings, I do this segment of the wedding that I call marriage advice from a single guy. Now I'm going to do a segment called parenting advice from a non-parent, okay? Here's what we need to realize when you parent your kids. Rebellion is something that kids are pretty much naturally born with. And if you don't get a handle on it when they're little rebellious, when they get big and rebellious, it's going to be very, very hard to deal with it. So you might say, well, I'm not a big fan of disciplining my kid when they act out. Well, one day that kid that acts out is going to be an adult that acts out, and then they're going to have adult-sized consequences. So it's best to deal with kid-sized actions with kid-sized consequences for them to learn their lesson before they become adults and have to deal with adult-sized consequences. Essentially, what we learned from verse number 21 is it's better to spank your child, because if you spank your child, then they won't get stoned. There's a twofold meaning in that, right? Spank them when they're little so they don't get stoned when they're old and rebellious.